Welcome to this Dental Business Mastery webinar. Hi, Amina. How are you?
Good, Julie. How are you today?
I am super. This is going to be an exciting event. Hopefully, we're going to be providing, or we will be providing, a load of helpful information to our attendees.
I'm super excited. I love working on dental practice startups.
It is good stuff. And so this is a 12-week guide to opening your dental practice. And it is going to be a journey that we're going to take you through 12 weeks prior to when you plan to open your doors for the first time or take over a practice for the first time. There's a lot of bits and pieces that you need to make sure you get done, and this is what this webinar is all about, making sure that you know all of that so you can progress through the coming weeks towards your practice ownership journey and with all the information that you need. So shall we get stuck straight into Amina as people are logging into the webinar?
Absolutely.
Groovy.
And I think, Julie, it's really will be helpful to anyone who's even thinking about opening a practice. Even if they're prepared and get all the insight very early on, they can apply it later.
That's true, because the information, kind of the shortest time frame you need is 12 weeks to prepare. Even better if you've got 6 months to prepare, a year to prepare, that's even better.
Yeah, and it just give you, probably save you a lot of time in the months coming up because you'll already be a few steps ahead and know what you need to do. So.
Yeah. I remember when I purchased my practice, it was very much a kind of a stop-start process. You'd go to the bank and they'd say, oh, you need these things. Like, oh, okay, I'll go away, get these things, and then I'll come back again. And so this is going to really put everything in the right order and help everyone become aware of the things to do. And when you've got this huge goal of having a dental practice, whether it's a startup from scratch or buying an established dental practice, it seems like this enormous thing to try to get done. And you are aware that there's a whole bunch of stuff that you're not aware about. And you do know that you get to know what those things are on the journey. But if you know everything at the start, you can plan it out in a nice, timely fashion. You've got your to-do list to get tackled every single day, and you're never overwhelmed with the number of things to get done. And you can have a little bit more confidence in opening day once you've put that effective preparation in place.
Yeah, and I find particularly if you're going to continue practicing up until, takeover time sort of thing, you really need to be a few steps ahead so you don't overwhelm yourself. And I think the best
That's true, because you're still working, aren't you, all the way through?
Yeah. And the most important thing I think when I'm working with startups is, that really good preparation gives you a really good start when you open those doors to start making money ASAP. The idea is, in an ideal world, we want the book full the minute the doors open. How do we achieve that?
Yeah, for sure. And so we're going to be talking about a few of our experiences as consultants working with dental practices from the very start, which hopefully people and our attendees will find interesting. And from the word go, let's speak a little bit about who we are. So Amina, tell everyone a little bit about who you are. How did you get to the position that you're in?
Well, I grew up in medical practices with my father being a doctor. But I myself started working in dentistry when I was 16 years old as a dental assistant. And I later became interested in practice management and accounting and studied accounting. And my dad, he was a really good doctor, but, not a very good businessman. And so that's where my passion for practice management and consulting came from, is that I wanted to help these people who are really good at their science and medicine but not so good at the business side, or they haven't actually been taught or had the time because they've been so busy with their studies. And I just realised how much of an impact and how helpful we can be to these people to show them how to run their businesses and make money without working so hard and not really having a lot to show for it.
And so how long have you actually been a dental consultant? You were a dental assistant, receptionist, practice manager for a few years, and then you became a dental consultant.
So I went out on my own in 2016. Yeah.
And soon after that, you and I came into contact with each other.
Well, yeah, I think we met perhaps that year.
That was nice. Thanks for initiating that meeting, Meanie. That was fantastic.
It was scary, but I got through it.
Well, I had a similar upbringing to you within the dental industry. I didn't come from a medical background in any way, but started as a dental assistant when I was 17, went through all the usual roles, dental assistant, receptionist, patient facilitator, coordinator, practice manager, and then I bought my own practice when I was 33. I owned that for 10 years. I was the first non-dentist to buy a practice in Australia, which I love telling people about me. And then started dental practice consulting when I sold that practice. And you and I then have joined forces since. So we've had consulting clients that we deal with separately. We've had a few clients that we have done a joint effort on, which has been super enjoyable. And we have since developed Dental Business Mastery, which our whole focus around Dental Business Mastery is to create learning opportunities and training opportunities for everyone within the dental practice situation. And so we'll tell you a little bit more about an offering that we've got for you at the end of this that may consistently help you with your journey towards practice ownership. But otherwise, let's get stuck into the topic of the day, which is the 12 weeks build up to owning your own dental practice, what you need to get done, what preparations need to have happen. So first of all, let's have a think about whether you are going to be buying a startup from scratch practice. So there's nothing there, you have to kit it all out yourself. There's been no existing dental practice, or you're buying an ongoing concern. And so there has been a practice for some period of time prior to it. It's got some kind of client base there, and you've bought into that dental practice or bought that dental practice. Now, the biggest thing that I tell clients around this is that either way there's going to be a large outlay. When we do a startup from scratch, we don't have that large outlay of cash funding to buy the goodwill of the practice, the ongoing clientele of the practice, but that large outlay goes through to the cost of the layout, the cost of all the equipment, and the cost of stocking that surgery. That can be quite substantial, can't it, Minnie?
Absolutely. Thousands and thousands of dollars.
Thousands and thousands of dollars. And so this is where the planning can come into play as well. You know, we're trying to make sure that people can reduce any wastage of spending, reduce any wastage of time, and start being successful real early. Because when you start being successful real early, you are benefiting from that long term. We'll talk more about that in a second. And so that's one of the big differences between the startup and the ongoing concern. You're either throwing all your funds into the setup of the equipment and the rooms, or you're throwing all that funding into buying a patient base. Now, the wonderful thing about buying an ongoing concern and buying that patient base, and that's what I did when I purchased my practice, is that you start turning over healthy funds straight away. And I can't tell you what a glorious feeling that was, that there was money going into my account from day dot. And so your break even has already been established by the previous owner. And so that's one of the enormous benefits of buying an ongoing concern over a startup, where with a startup you start from nothing, and you need to have a whole bunch of money sitting there waiting to go backwards, because you're going to need to pay staff straight away, pay rent or mortgage on that place straight away. You're going to have a whole series of expenses from the start that will come out whether you're breaking even or not. And how long is it going to take for you to get to the point where you're breaking even, that you are collecting the amount of money that's needed to sustain that business, at the very least just sustain it? And that's a time frame that we don't know what it is. And that's one of the things that you and I try to do with our clients, isn't it, Mina? That we make sure that that time it takes to get to break even for startups is as short as humanly possible. And it is possible to become really, really short. And I know that you've got a couple of really impressive stories around that as well, that in itself is such a wonderful thing to learn how to do, because otherwise you just keep bleeding money until one day you're breaking even.
Absolutely. And it's just draining, you know, it's a lot of hard work to get there, and it's demotivating when you feel like that, let alone the, you know, financial outcomes of it all. So
yeah, and we've got rose-coloured glasses on when we buy our own practice. You know, we start up our own practice, just like when we are, you know, buying a house or looking at a new relationship. We always look at all the benefits around it, and we are shy to pick out the negatives. We don't want to be negative Nellies. We don't want to focus on the bad bits. However, recognising that it will be going backwards until you start going forwards is something you need to carefully look at if you're doing a startup. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't be doing a startup from scratch that. There's enormous benefits around doing that over an ongoing concern, and you are getting rid of a few of the hurdles that you can have when you're taking over an ongoing concern. However, we do need to be aware of that and do whatever you can out there to get the marketing strategy right, making sure that you are in a right location, etc., to make sure that that time period it takes to get to break even is as short as possible. Now, selecting the right practice, this naturally leads us into selecting the right practice. Now, this is we're going to just do a quick overview of these areas. The areas within this webinar, within this 12-week guide, that require deeper contemplation, deeper training and learning, there is an opportunity to tap into that at the end of the webinar that we'll talk to you about. So do know that there is more information that we can provide, but we do want to make sure that this isn't a 6-hour webinar. We want to make it as timely as possible, but still give you a lot of valuable information. And so there's going to be areas that we can go into more deeply, but possibly later on with you. So selecting the right practice, this is before we go down the 12-week process, because we have to make sure that we've got a list of things that we're calculating within our brain and contemplating within our brain. Is this practice that I'm about to look at, or this site that I'm about to look at, is it going to be adequate for me, not just to get myself established as a practice owner, but it's going to work for me long term as well. Number one, of course, is location.
Looking at location is, really, really important. I think, looking at the demographics surrounding you, what kind of dentistry you really enjoy doing, who your ideal patient is, all those sorts of things is important to the, outcomes that you want to achieve. We do, have contacts that do a really great job at sourcing locations and doing demographic research and things like that. So if anyone's interested in that, they could perhaps ask in the chat or shoot us an email and we can forward that contact on.
Absolutely. And we had a presentation, or we organised a 3-day conference, and one of our presenters was this particular company, and you and I kept looking at each other throughout that whole presentation and saying to each other, who would buy a practice without the advice of these guys? They are just superstars. And so one group is the company, and we've got a particular contact that's so professional, and they're all fantastic there, but we've got one that we love and use all the time. And certainly put in the chat if you'd like his details. And if you have questions throughout this whole webinar, we're just going to keep on a roll here, but throw your questions into the chat box and we will be able to answer them at the end or towards the end of today's webinar, so they will all be answered. So please, all of your challenges, all your comments, all your questions, please throw them into the chat. Really? Location is super important. Also, public transport is another area that you need to have a look at, if depending on the demographic you're trying to market towards. So for example, if you were really heavily trying to market towards families and families with kids who are still in high school and primary school, maybe close to public transport is a great idea, so they can come straight from school straight down to the dental surgery. Also too, it might be the other end of the age spectrum, so the more elderly, where they're not driving themselves anymore but they're taking public transport. Sometimes public transport can be an enormous bonus to have close to your location. However, it's not a be all and end all. If it doesn't have public transport, it wouldn't be a particular concern, would it, Meanie?
No, and depending on where the practice is located, if it's more suburban, probably not so much of an issue, but...
Yeah. So nowadays, everyone's Ubering it everywhere anyway. A big thing is the scope for growth in the physical premises. This is another thing where, where are your goals in your mind? Are your goals just to get opening day happening, or are they, I want this practice to be growing and after 10-year period have more than just the one surgery, for example? So does the current building, can it accommodate any growth of additional surgeries, which of course then is hand in hand with additional car spaces that are required for that growth? And I think with the scope of growth for the services and patient base as well, if you have got a very heavily elderly patient base and your particular passion is Invisalign and orthodontics, then the two don't seem to marry up. However, they do marry up if you're doing a lot of implant work.
Yeah, and I think leaving space for growth, we can really underestimate this. I find that happens quite a lot, and clients that I've worked with, even thinking about the more staff you've got, that's the more sort of space you need around for lockers and staff room, and the bigger the practice grows, the more space you need for stairy and another order club and all these sorts of things. So there's lots and lots to consider, and I really strongly advise not to cut yourself short on that, because if there's no room to expand, you'll be kicking yourself down the track.
That's true, and I suppose we're always thinking as well, long term, which is when we're going to eventually sell this practice to somebody else one day. We want it to be as highly saleable as possible, and that new buyer eventually one day will be looking for greater space and a greater capacity for growth as well. Quality of goodwill. This is enormous if we're buying an ongoing concern. How do you assess whether that goodwill is worth anything or not? And certainly when I purchased my practice, it had been ongoing since 1920. The dentist's father was the original owner in the middle of the city. The son had brought it out to a suburban practice and had been there for 50 years by the time I purchased it. So that goodwill was extremely long, and the people involved, when you look at the client base, they've all been there for decades and decades long. Whole family members are coming through, and that's strong, healthy goodwill. However, if it's been in place, this particular practice, for just a couple of years, it's not going to be as valuable because there's not as much loyalty there as well. And I think the other element around goodwill is look at the demographic that is on offer to you. Is it the kind of demographic that, as I say, taps into the kind of services that you want to provide? We really need to recognise that we need to match those two things up. They're two pieces of a jigsaw that can either fit together quite nicely, or they're just trying to put a round peg in a square hole for the life of your business ownership there at the location that you've decided to purchase.
Yeah, and I think determining the quality of the goodwill and the price you should pay for the practice inclusive of the goodwill is, certainly not my area of expertise. However, I have worked with financial advisors and accountants. They do have an approximate equation that they use to purchase any business really, and then you can make some decisions maybe based around that. So we also have some contacts we could share if people were needing advice around that area as well.
Yeah, a lot of it's about getting the right advice, that's for sure.
Yeah, and it's really just not a place to cut corners with, particularly when we're talking about sourcing the property and sourcing the value. They're things that we need to get right.
For sure. A few more ideas on how to select the right practice is there an existing team in place? So if you're buying an ongoing concern, there might be a dental practice team there that have been there for a long time. Sometimes I've come across practices where the dentist is retiring and the nurses have decided I'm going to retire as well because they're all of the same kind of age group. Other times it's quite a young team, or they're still going to be working for a number of years afterwards, and so they would like to stay on site. And there are both benefits and drawbacks, and I think this is one of the keys to remember with all of these things. Every element of selecting the right practice is going to be both benefits and drawbacks to each of these elements, and it's about identifying how can we make sure we're tapping into the benefit of that particular element and reducing or mitigating the risk of the drawback. With the existing team, for example, you've got the enormous benefit that they're the ones with the relationships with all the patients, and so they're going to be key in encouraging the current patient base to trust in this new owner, to develop a friendly relationship with this new owner, because the people I do know and trust are still there, and they now are trusting and friendly with this new owner, so that gives me permission, or they've got the authority that it's going to help direct my behaviour to do the same thing. Likewise, if that team are really resistant to the changeover of ownership and they only really like the old guy and they don't like the new person coming in, then that team dynamic can work against you.
Absolutely. I think evaluating what you'd like to do with the team, and then also, another whole can of worms gets opened when there's an existing team, as in, how much leave does everybody have? How much long service leave do they have, and all those sorts of things. So.
Yeah, and whether you're going to be breaking the employment or continuing on with those employment contracts, that's where your lawyers are going to play a crucial role in advising you to make sure that you're protected and the team members still get all their entitlements. Major projects for the area, we're talking about one group before, the buyer's advocate group, and they can be enormously helpful in recognising, are there any other major projects going on in the area that will either help you or hinder you in the establishment of your practice. How about the age and functionality of equipment? I know that when I purchased my practice, I was just happy that it all worked on that day. I didn't even think about looking at maintenance schedules and if they've kept up to date with things, and the last time the O-rings were checked, all the rest of it. And you can get right into the minutiae of every little thing when you are buying a dental practice. So I think you've got to kind of draw a line in the sand at some point and go, you know what, there are so many things that are going towards this practice being a great purchase for me. I'm going to have the 80-20 rule. As long as 80% of the stuff's working well for me, I'm going to just accept there's 20% of things that will come up in the coming first few weeks or months, such as all of a sudden, this happened with a client recently, just bought the practice, like within a couple of weeks, the autoclave broke down. And that's something that none of us can foresee. So do recognise you can't get everything working your way. So the 80-20 principle, Pareto principle, when go for 80% working your way and accept and embrace when the 20% doesn't go your way, so you can just manage these things as quickly as possible without getting over your emotional hurdles to get there. But do have a look at the age and functionality of equipment, because it can be wildly expensive if all of a sudden you do have to buy a new autoclave. That's $15,000 just like that, just in a heartbeat, and you need it straight away. You can't delay that kind of purchase.
Yeah. I think too, with dental equipment, it's very expensive to buy it new. However, once you own it, once you have bought it or it's secondhand, it's not really worth anything much. So
that's true.
It's a bit of a funny one when we're looking at buying a practice and valuing the existing equipment.
It's like buying a car, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
Buying a brand new car costs, $120,000. The very next week, it's worth $80,000.
Yeah. Yeah, with dental practices, we use so much technology, so much equipment, and it feels like we're forever doing repairs to something. But with the amount of, equipment we have and technology, we have to expect it. And repairs and maintenance, there needs to be a budget for that. It's always going to be there.
Yeah, and I think that's right. Just embrace the concept that it's there, so you don't have so much resistance around it when it inevitably happens.
Yeah.
The quality of the stock, so sometimes we can have loads and loads of shelves of stock, but sometimes it's all out of date as well, like all these expiry dates have been up and there's old rusted burrs in the back of the shelves and things. So having a bit of an assessment of where that stock lies is a good idea, because you don't want to jump into your practice. That's an ongoing concern, and within the first few weeks recognise that all the composite has to be replaced because it's all out of stock. Keep in mind that you're buying this practice from a practitioner who knew they were going to sell it very soon, and so were they going to be out of pocket and go, I'll buy 10 tubes of composite? No, I'll just buy one more tube. All I have to do is get myself up to sell day. So recognise that's a dynamic that you're dealing with as well, and you have to embrace that, because you do exactly the same thing at the time that you end up selling that practice. You're not going to be throwing a whole bunch of money into your stock cupboard there neither. So have a look at the quality of the stock and whether you're going to have to make any major purchases in the changeover. And the need for renovations, this is a big one, isn't it, Amina? Because when you get in there, again, you've got the rose-coloured glasses on, or that tiny staff room, I'm sure that'll work okay for the first couple of years, or that waiting room, I'm sure that, it looking so old and decrepit isn't going to have such a big impact on my success. But then as you're in there, you're like, oh my God, I can't stop seeing how old that waiting room is. And when we start doing renovations, especially if they're structural renovations, that is a big cost, and quite often you have to stop productivity for a certain period of time while these renovations take place, so the costs rise even further. So being aware of those sort of things from day one's a good idea. Looking at the compatibility of the patient base and the services you will provide, we've already touched on that to some degree, making sure that the kind of services you provide, are you buying into a Goodwill that is going to want those services? That's key. And going through the financials. So this is important. This is what every accountant and lawyer are going to want you to provide to them to help advise you down the right path. That is, get all the profit and losses, the balance sheets, key performance indicator reports. Any of those sort of reports are going to be very helpful, and get them for the past 3 years if you're buying an ongoing concern that has lasted that long. That way, and they're now saying with the COVID situation, get it for the past 5 years. Recognise that during the COVID situation, that productivity would have fluctuated depending on whether there are any lockdowns, etc. And just because there was a fear amongst the public in coming out and, isolating and all the other things. But also during that period of time, there are a lot of government handouts as well and government support. So recognising that the income may not have been just attributed to the production of the practice, but may have been other income sources coming in, and that's where your profit and loss is going to show you where this productivity lies in terms of just what that practice generated. And the fee list, Amina, that's a big one. This is you can't jump into an ongoing concern and increase the fee list to anything substantial and expect the patients to be really happy about that. They might be more aware of it actually and be looking for any increases. And so look at the fee list and make sure that with that current fee list and with the types of services and number of services you provide as a practitioner, can you break even with that? One of the classic scenarios that comes up to me is the next point down. Have they got preferred provider status? And that may be really restricting down the amount of money that you could earn. You could be currently working at a practice that's not preferred provider and you're generating a certain income. Then you go into and buy a practice that is a preferred provider, and that income's going to drop on average by 25% because of the preferred provider fees are so much lower than what other practices do charge. And so you need to incorporate that into your cash flow projections as to how long and how much work is it going to take for us to start breaking even.
You need to really be comfortable with the current fee list. It's going to, determine, whether you can practice the type of dentistry the way that you like to practice it.
And you don't have to stick to that fee list forever, but it just needs to be a thoughtful graduation, doesn't it? The services that create the current production, there's that classic story of you think it's a really pretty picture to buy this existing practice. It's been going great guns, lots of crown and bridge, lots of smile makeovers and full mouth rehabs, and the turnover is massive. And so you buy that practice for a massive fee. However, if you don't have that skill set to maintain those services, then you are not going to be realising the potential production of that practice, and you will have ended up overpaying for it simply because you are not able to generate that kind of productivity. How about the employee contracts and wages? You touched on that earlier, Amina. Let's make sure that we understand and are in agreement, if we're taking them over, of the current contracts and the amount of money that people are being paid. What I've also seen in the past, I don't know if you have as well, Amina, that you've got a dentist that knows that they're retiring at some point, knows that for example, their receptionist is just great guns and is worthy of this quite high hourly wage, so starts to accelerate the increases of that staff member towards the end part of their ownership, knowing that if a new owner comes in, they will likely have to maintain that high level wage. And I'm all for paying people what they're worth, and I'm all for making sure that we are improving the wages of dental auxiliary staff as one of the ways to help replenish people back into the industry again. However, if you're young and starting out, you may not be able to cater to that higher wage, and it may end up being quite a thorn in your side. And so just being aware of that and showing all of these contracts and wages to your accountant, bookkeeper, etc. The lawyers for the contracts, so they can help guide you whether these things are fair or not, reasonable or not. The new patient flow, and just because a dental practice is generating 80 new patients a month doesn't mean that they are more successful than the one that's generating 5 new patients a month. I've got a classic scenario in my brain of a practice that did generate 80 new patients a month, but those particular ones all came in on special discounts and under special arrangements with different health funds. And when it came to them rebooking, when the special offer was gone, none of them rebooked, as opposed to a long-standing practice that had been around for 50 years and they're still running now, nice and local to where I am, and they only generate about 5 new patients a month. But those 5 new patients a month are generated by zero marketing or word of mouth, and those 5 patients are literally taking their business from their loyal business from one dental practice to this dental practice, and they'll be there forever. And so look at the new patient flow. We want some kind of new patient flow, and we want a strong element of new patient flow from existing patient referrals. I think that's a good thing. But if they've put marketing strategies in place, are they successful? So look at how those new patients are coming through as well.
Current marketing strategies. This is a big one, isn't it? There's so many things to do. And I think, making sure you get the right advice and you invest properly and smartly around this, I think, is very, very wise. I see many people go, hunt to get the cheapest website possible, and they have poor SEO and they end up redoing it all sometime later. I think it's really important to get, people with a really good reputation and known results onto that, making sure you've got a good website, social media, and definitely very good internal marketing strategies.
Yeah, so I think that's a good thing to look at when you're looking at a practice that you're wanting to purchase. What are their current marketing strategies? Are they working? Do they have a strong website? Will you need to rebuild it from scratch? Can you take it over? Do they have a current social media page? So, do they have sponsorship of the local sporting clubs? Like, what is working for them that you would like to then take over in that practice purchase? Because sometimes they say, no, you can't have my website, that's mine. And you do have to start it from scratch. And so recognizing that this is also playing part of the value of the dental practice. And recall activity, I think that's a good one to have a look at. What kind of, I was mentioning before, that practice that did a lot of marketing and got a lot of new patients coming through, but they never rebooked for their recalls. What's the current recall booking rate? Are they used to pre-booking their appointment time 6 months ahead? When they send out their recalls, do people actually respond to it? So it can lend itself towards the type or the category of patient that practice has got. And we really do want to see all ranges of patients, but the ones that are contributing to your long-term viability are the ones that are loyal just to your practice, and they do come in for those regular appointment times. And the current owner's philosophy, if the current owner's philosophy is all around patient care and patient education, and we will take as long as it takes to make sure that our examinations are thorough and we've got all the time in the world to explain oral conditions to the patients, and money is not our driving force, that's beautiful. And that's going to be a lovely marriage if you have the same kind of philosophy. However, if your philosophy is more around turnover and making sure, we're going to be preferred provider, so we need to make sure that we're getting through enough treatments and patients every day to make break even, then that philosophy is going to be in contradiction to what's there in place already and what the current client base enjoy. So we want a happy marriage with that as well. Proportion of patients with extras insurance. Does this play a role? Meanie, I put that one in there. What do you think?
It possibly does. I mean, if you are thinking of becoming a preferred provider, or the existing practice is a preferred provider, you can generate reports that tell you, how many patients are with which fund, that kind of thing. It's good to know, and then you can make your decisions, around
a bit more
that.
data to take into consideration.
Yeah.
Yeah. And employee entitlements, you were mentioning if you are taking over those contracts, those employment contracts, you do need to know if within 6 months people are going to say, I'm going to go for long service leave now.
That's right.
Is anyone pregnant, about to take maternity leave, etc.?
Yeah, we have touched on that previously, but yeah, it's a really important thing to find out to make sure you get all those reports.
Practice reputation. So what are the Google reviews and Facebook reviews, etc., say about the practice, and even making sure that you become involved in the community Facebook group in the area that you are looking at buying into, because sometimes those, there's often the question, who can recommend a great dentist? And what you'll find is, a couple of dentists in the area always get mentioned all the time. If you're one of them, because your guys, that their reputation is so awesome, that's going to be a great indicator of the reputation your practice has in the area.
Patients' outstanding accounts. That's always very important to make sure that you have a look at this in the existing practice if you're looking at buying one. A practice who hasn't managed their accounts and got thousands and thousands of dollars owing, means there's a certain culture in the practice with the patients and paying. And, quite frankly, buying a practice where people don't want to pay is probably not that beneficial. So
it's hard to change that behaviour, isn't it? I like the old owner. He let me take a year to pay off.
Yeah.
And can you replace the current productivity? I think we've covered that in the past as well. So looking at, you can do reports in software now of so many things. Back when I bought my practice many, many years ago, we didn't have all these reports. But now you can get a report generated of how many crowns, how many dentures, how many extractions, how many recalls, all of those things, what actually contributed to the current productivity of that practice, because that can be a great indicator for you in your cash flow projections. But are you able to do all those services yourself to, at the very least, maintain what's currently being done? If you take over a practice that they do have many, many appointment times every day and they're hammering patients in and out constantly, and you like to take more time with that, you need to take that into consideration when you're doing your cash flow projection. You may not be able to be as productive as the last one for very good reasons, but it is going to impact on what sort of turnover you're looking at every day.
And I think the other things to look at around that when you're considering it all is, having a look at what the practice has referred out. Sometimes, the dentist doesn't do endo or extractions and those sorts of things. So if you're really good at those things and they're referring out lots of it, there's a big market for you there, a lot of opportunity. And are there other areas that aren't, other services that aren't being offered by the practice at all that you've got a keen interest in and you think that there's a demographic for it?
Great insight. That is a great insight. And quite often, more nowadays, I'm finding some practices say we just don't like to do extractions here. Whereas if you love them and are great at them, man, there's a whole nother stream of income coming through.
Leases for equipment and premises. We've touched on this a little bit, but making sure with all the financials that all these things are presented and are listed in the sale contract, because you will be liable for them if they are not considered and paid out or managed. And sometimes they can be quite a lot, and you need to, include the repayments of them in your cash flow budgets and things like that. So you really need to be aware of that.
And certainly with the location lease, is it going to be long enough? Have a discussion with that landlord and say, is this going to be an ongoing thing for a long period of time, or am I going to have to find a new location in a couple of years' time because you've got other plans for the premises?
Yeah, and I think we always lean towards this leasing of the premises thing. And, I've had some clients who I've referred to one group, as we, mentioned before, and they've ended up actually buying the building and things like that. So many benefits. So not only are they earning money from the practice, but this commercial property is growing in value and all those sorts of things. So you really need to be smart about that, and money well invested to get good advice surrounding that, I think.
For sure.
And valuation of the practice, we mentioned again, I think, really getting good advice around what you should pay for the practice and really what it's worth. And then, there will be emotional things or other factors outside what a financial advisor will tell you that, yourself, your consultant, other advisors will be able to see that there's potential for things that perhaps that financial person in that one little space can't see. So there's flexibility around that. There's flexibility as much as you want to pay, basically, but I think getting a ballpark about what's reasonable and then working outside of that is a good way to go.
Yeah, and I think using a valuation or a broker who does dental, they're the ones with the enormous experience of so many dental sales. They know more so the pitfalls and the things to look out for than just like a bank valuation, for example.
Yeah.
So that's all the things that you can consider in the selection of your location or the practice that you'd like to purchase. We do encourage you to source your advocates early as well. So research and ask for referrals of who friends and colleagues use, but also talk to them about providing you with some kind of reference, and so they can actually speak about their direct experience with this advocate. And when we're talking about advocates, we're talking about anyone that's going to help you and advise you in your best interests moving forward. And they would be get a great lawyer, a great accountant, certainly a great bookkeeper, financial institution. There are so many available out there. Find out what people's experiences have been with that, and a practice buying advocate or broker, which we were just mentioning then as well. So this launches us now into the main topic, which is what are we doing for the 12 weeks prior to opening day? So week number 1, this is a progressive journey that we're going to take you on step by step through the process. Week number 1, we're going to be constructing the business plan, establishing the company, and securing our finance. So number 1, construct your business plan. Your business plan is needed to gain personal clarity over your own venture. So you've got it all in your head about where we're going and how we're going to get there. Establishing the goals for your practice, so you're not just randomly being productive. You know exactly how much money we need to break even, how much money more productivity do we need in order to grow. Also, to submit to the financial institutions for securing funding. Now, when I had my practice for 10 years, I certainly started with a business plan at point 1. Every time I went for new funding for a new piece of equipment or for a slight renovation, I had to redo the business plan over and over again. I would imagine that over that 10-year journey, I wrote 20 business plans. And at the start you go, gosh, what a laborious process. But I tell you, it does develop great clarity and planning in your head. There are enormous benefits around it. And this is one of the things that we go far deeper into within a program that we're offering to this group of attendees of this webinar. And the business plan needs to hit certain points, but your financial institution will be asking for this before they provide any kind of finance to you. And if you would like to source that, how to do that, how to construct a business plan yourself, there is a link here. Now we're going to be sending through the presentation to all of your email addresses. So there is a link there that you can use to source how to get your business plan organised. But we'll take you through everything, where you're going to get your market from, who are you going to employ, what roles will they fulfill, what does your practice end up looking like, what's your philosophy, what services are you going to roll out, where's your cash flow projection as well. There's a whole bunch of stuff that's required for your business plan, and it will play a big role in any financial institution and providing you the funds to actually purchase your practice.
See your accountant to establish your company. If you do not have an accountant, conduct a search on the CPA, Certified Practicing Accountant website. It'll take a couple of weeks to receive your ABN and tax file number. So all these things can be done independently. You can do them yourself. It takes a little bit of clicking around on the internet and a little bit of time, but really not that hard. And even searching, for a business name and all that sort of thing. And some of these things can be, a little bit tedious, but there's help around if people need it. You could always engage help from people like Julie and myself or various others.
Yeah, and it's a good starting point of your relationship with your accountant to get them to do that work for you. They will understand, you want to be able to start this journey. They're going to be involved in your journey all the way through. Amina and I are big supporters of making sure you are meeting up with your accountant at least every 6 months to make sure you're on track. So you want them engaged and involved in your business, and if possible from day one. It's a wonderful thing. Secure your financing. So you will need to have your completed business plan to be able to secure your financing. So organise a meeting with the representative of your chosen financial institution, whether it be ANZ, CBA or Westpac, one of the banks, or it could be Bank of Queensland Specialist or Credible, one of the more dental health service related financial institutions. So sit down with them and allow them to guide you through the process as well. They'll tell you everything that you need. You're never at a point where you've got a brick wall up in front of you and you say to yourself, I have no idea where to go from here. There's advice all around you from all of your stakeholders that you adopt and take on throughout your buying process or your startup process.
There's also some really good brokers around in the finance space for medical and dental practices.
Do you have any that you can mention now?
I sure can. We've got Emika RA from Enrich Finance. We'll share these contacts with you in the follow-up email.
Fantastic. So that's week one. How easy was that? We're already through it. The biggest thing that's going to take your time is getting that business plan organised, but there are ways of being guided through that process. So what are we going to cover in week two, Meanie? What's week two take up?
Get an additional provider number, open bank accounts, order list of equipment and consumables, and you'll probably find this is a list you'll keep coming back to and adding to for a while. Open accounts with supply companies.
Fantastic. So we do need an additional provider number. I think a lot of practitioners will know that for every additional location, and sometimes it can take a short period of time to get through and sometimes it can take a long period of time to get through. So getting onto that one early is always a good idea.
I'm finding at the moment, particularly with all the COVID type stuff, Medicare has been lagging a fair bit, so good to get onto that early.
Beautiful. Open bank accounts. And so again, this is where you're going to need your business plan. This is where I needed my business plan again as well. They like to know that you're setting yourself up for success. So take your business plan with you and all the company documents that your accountant has provided to you that have your ABN and tax file number, etc. At the very least, open a trading account, have a credit card, and also establish for yourself online banking.
Yeah, and possibly, depending on what savings you've got, probably an overdraft as well is always a good thing to have.
That's a tremendous idea, Amina, especially if you're starting up from scratch. Get a really healthy overdraft.
Order list for required equipment and consumables. For new startups, this will be lengthy. Be sure not to oversupply yourself. So we're talking about cash flow here. Purchase what is needed for a couple of months at a time. Building stock levels comes after your cash flow is established and healthy. Remember, your money is useful when it is cash in your account, not as stock on a shelf. And allow time for back orders. And I think particularly with equipment at the moment, we've got delays all over the country for all sorts of things, cars. I know it's happening with dental and medical equipment as well. So allow yourself plenty of time to order stock and equipment. And another thing to look into perhaps for some of you is an ordering system and discounts, particularly when you're starting a new practice and you're buying a lot of things at once. So if you have a look at Dental Innovations, they have a really good system and discounts there for you.
Tremendous. We'll add that link into the follow-up as well. Okay, week 3, we're establishing our FPOS and HICAPS terminals, and we are thinking about who we're going to hire as part of our team, unless we're taking over an existing team, of course. So first of all, establish your FPOS and HICAPS terminals. So all you need to do is contact HICAPS. They do all the setup process. They contact all the health funds and get your provider number connected with all of them as well. However, again, this can take a few weeks, and by the sounds of it, Meanie, during COVID, it may take a little bit longer as well. So getting onto them ASAP, early on in the piece, is a great idea.
Absolutely.
And staffing. So during your business plan construction, that would have brought you to the mindset of how many staff do we need, how many roles do we need filled, and what kind of staff members are we looking for. And so do think of the skills and characteristics of the team members that you want to have as a team backing you up. Getting some experienced people who have already got years and years in other dental practices, know what's successful, knows what isn't that great and helpful, is a wonderful thing to incorporate within your team. So get a lot of experience in there if you can, and then go on that recruitment journey. This is another area that we can delve deeply into to make sure it's done very, very well and successfully, which we'll tell you about at the end. But use the things such as Seek, Facebook groups, Indeed, dental recruitment agencies. I think they'd be getting more and more popular, many, than in the past, because there just isn't that big pool of people available to hire from anymore.
Yeah, and I think just putting the word out there amongst, friends, family, acquaintances, you never know what will come. It doesn't matter if it's 6 months before you're going to open. If you plant little seeds with some really good people, in 6 months' time they might be annoyed with their current boss and want a new job.
Only hope.
So it's really worth networking and getting verbal if we're in a position to do so.
Absolutely. And also do tap into the Australian Dental Association and Fair Work resources that they've got around employment. We need to really understand the level of responsibility that we have to the people that we employ and what it takes to make sure that everything's legal and above board, giving our employees everything that they are entitled to. So become very familiar with that. I mean, once you start that practice ownership journey and employment journey, you become very aware of it, because it's something that you have to relook at time and time again. But getting a strong awareness around it from day one is a great thing.
Branding and logo design, marketing strategy, cash flow projection.
This is week 4. Let's have a look what we're doing in week 4. So branding and logo design, Mini.
Depending upon your available finances, outsource is an important element to a designer. You can go with a company for a cheaper alternative. Use Upwork, Fiverr, 99 Designs. Ensure your brand is consistent with the service you will provide and your market for those services. So I really think this is an area that you need to invest well in and get somebody who does a really, really good job. And it's got to be something you love, that you're passionate about. I find when you're excited about your branding, you feel proud of it. So I think that's really important. And I think even if you already do have other team members who are going to be with you on this journey, getting them involved in the process and getting their opinion can be helpful with getting them on board and getting them excited and passionate about the new practice as well.
Absolutely. And I wonder if, with an ongoing concern, buying an ongoing concern, if you were thinking about early on in that relationship with your patients, that Goodwill that you've purchased, that you were thinking about tweaking the logo or the branding, maybe develop 3 different choices and send it out to them and get their input about what they really enjoy. For number one, they're the ones you're trying to appeal to, so getting their input and feedback is a great thing, but it may make them feel quite included and trusted and deepen that level of engagement and the trusting relationship that you have with them as well.
Yeah, I think it's really, really important.
And every time you speak to somebody in regards, any expert in the field, such as Angus Pryor, in regards to marketing, you do walk away from every conversation going, oh, wow, they know so much more than I do.
It's a massive topic. And if you've never been down this road before and you do work with somebody in this field, like a website designer, logo designer, it's amazing the amount of thought and detail that goes into it. And when they present you with all these ideas and the thoughts around those ideas, it's mind-blowing, and it can take a long time.
Yeah, and they deliver. So if you can imagine that you're having a practice that's really catering to young little children, yet you've got a very professional looking logo that's more catered towards an older generation, it's not going to marry. And so this is where the marketing people and the branding people are so very, very good. And that leads us into the marketing strategy. So what we was talking about before, if you're a startup practice, your marketing strategy will be aimed at your local community becoming aware of you and encourage them to use you rather than go anywhere else for the next dental service that they require. However, if you are taking over an existing patient base, you may not think you need a marketing strategy, but we believe you do. You need to be able to encourage that existing patient base to stay with you, because one of the common things that happens is the patient thinks, well, I'm seeing someone new anyway, I might as well go and try a whole nother practice out. So certainly, as Amina says, allocate a budget and seek expert advice in this area of your marketing strategy. There are so many ways that you can market to your existing client base and potentially new clients. And there's a list there: external signage, your website, social media pages, yellow pages online, mailbox drops, local newspapers, etc., etc., etc. So there's a whole range of different ways you can get your message out there that here we are, we're fantastic, you should come along and see us. And your cash flow projection, another crucial thing that you'll be using all the way through your practice ownership journey. So getting awareness of how to create a cash flow projection and how to have it being an ongoing thing that you're assessing every month is going to be an important element of managing your finances. And so again, this is something that me and I can go delve deeply with you later on if you wanted to enter into a program that we've got on offer to you. But it is important to understand the flow of cash in and out of your practice. So get your bookkeeper or accountant to help you with this if you're going to go it alone. The two questions you need to answer is: how much surplus cash do I need to cover myself while expenses outweigh income? And how long will I be going backward financially before I start making a profit? Really crucial. If you can consider, and I got this advice very early on in my practice ownership journey, that if you think about how long will staff members hang around while you're not paying them, a couple of weeks and they're hitting the bricks. How long will you be able to stay at your location when you're not paying rent? 3 months and you're kicked out. Electricity, gas, water, 3 months and you're kicked out. And so we do need to keep cash flow managed very, very effectively in order for us to even have a chance to be viable.
Yeah, and another thing that I really have noticed is people are very conservative about the amount they put on an overdraft if they apply for one. You know, don't be conservative, be overly generous, leave yourself plenty of room. You know, we only need things like, heaven forbid, hopefully it never happens again, but lockdowns or floods or, you know, whatever else that are completely unforeseen. And then there's, of course, illness and other things, you know, that can happen. But the stress that it causes you, and it takes you away from concentrating on the things you should be doing and looking after yourself, it's really not worth it. Because if you need to, you know, you pay a fee for having it in the first place, which may feel like a waste of money. I see it as an insurance policy, and if you don't have to use it, that's awesome. And you know, you can make the money back later to cope, but that stress at the time of how am I going to pay everything and everyone is really not worth having if you can just organise it properly from the start.
You're absolutely right, Meanie. And doesn't that stress around money, just think of it in our own personal lives, it sometimes has a negative impact on the decisions that we make.
It absolutely does. We react out of fear when we're in financial distress.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
no, great advice about that overdraft. I agree. Okay, Amina, that brings us into week 5. We'll be covering in week 5 insurances, stationery printing, dental software, in-store phone lines, and staff uniforms. So with your insurances, when you start a dental practice, you do need to establish some of these so they're active from day one. Building insurance is one of the things that you'll need to have, even if you're leasing the premises. Most commercial leases do require the tenant to do the building insurance, so make sure that you know whether you're still liable or not. Plant and equipment and contents insurance, these floods up in Queensland. Imagine if something happened and you had to outlay all the money for additional equipment. That would be traumatic. So get insurance for that. And with those insurances, put a little reminder for yourself every couple of years to update that, because as you grow, you will get more equipment. And so you want to make sure you're always covered for that. Public liability insurance is important, and professional indemnity insurance.
This is more of the fun part. Insurance is boring.
It is boring, I agree.
Most stationery printing is nothing more exciting than receiving your glossy business cards.
You got that right.
Correspondence, letterhead. Although that's just dependent on what you want to do, I guess, this day and age. Sometimes we just, print the logo.
That's true. And a lot of documents nowadays are sent out digitally, so the logo is already appearing there on your Word document for the letterhead. So, yeah, there's a question mark now whether you even need to have printed correspondence. Certainly with the invoices and receipts, you'll probably still get a handful of people that want to have that physical copy, even if you want to start the routine of emailing those items.
Yeah. And invoice, receipt, letterhead printed.
Beautiful. Dental software. This is a big thing to get right at the start, isn't it, Amina?
It is. And I guess for most, we tend to stick with what we know. But it really is worth having a look around the market before you make this commitment, because it's a big expense. It's a big exercise. And once you buy it, install it, implement it, and then train the staff, it's not something you really want to revisit too quickly. That's
true. And when I first started in the dental industry, there was one obscure dental software program out there that one practice that I was working with was using. Every other one was a still hard copy with everything. But since then, how many are there out there at the moment? There's 8, 10, a dozen? Installing of the phone lines as well. This is if you know the location that you're going to buy into and you're doing all the prep around that, and you know what capacity that building has so far in terms of phone lines. Even if you're buying an ongoing concern, maybe they've always had a one practitioner set up there and the 1 or 2 phone lines that are coming through. Do keep in mind getting the technician out once and doing it all in a neat fashion is a great idea. It's not enormously costly depending on the kind of communications system that you want to get in, but actually getting phone lines in play isn't actually a costly process. But you'll at least need to have a FPOS high caps line, and I'd suggest 2 incoming lines. You never want to have the receptionist on the phone with one person and any other call that comes through gets an answering message or an engaged signal. We want to always make sure that we're not providing any barriers to new business coming through or looking after our existing patients. But get a few put in there, yeah?
I think so. Best to be prepared. Before we know it, they tend to get chewed up. You've got somebody on one line following up patients and incomplete treatment and recalls, and receptionist on the line to a couple, so you really need a few lines.
Absolutely. Now, staff uniforms. Now, depending on how you're going to do your staff uniforms, you might want to have them custom made with your embroidered logo on it. Always keep in mind, it's going to take a few weeks to get that organised, not just to get the embroidery done or the design of the uniform decided upon, but gathering all your team members and finding out sizes and if everyone likes the colour and the this and the that all takes a bit of time. So do put this into action early on, say around week 5 of your 12-week process. You may even want to go far simpler. So if there's a local uniform company by you, what a fantastic process is to find out where they are, set up an account with them. Every new team member that comes on board with your practice, one of their things is to be sent down to that place and get your chosen uniform in their size. It takes away the embarrassment of people sharing their sizes. I know that's always been the case when I've asked dental teams, now write down your sizes. They're like, oh, I don't want to, can I just whisper it to you? And so when they can actually go down there, try it on themselves and make sure it's a really good fit, that can sometimes work really well. They just put it on your account at the end of the month, you pay for that. Also, do keep in mind with uniforms, we want them to look professional. We're a health service after all. We want to have the fabrics really breathable. It's a hot job being a dental assistant, isn't it, Meanie?
It sure is.
You're in front of autoclaves and you're running from one room to the other all the time. We also want them to be easily cleaned. We don't want them to stain very swiftly, and one that doesn't require ironing too much. So if they show up a whole bunch of creases, people are going to look shabby really quickly. Everyone has different routines at home about how effectively they iron, and it's a difficult conversation to keep having with someone. Can you please iron your uniform before you come in? So make it easy for them to succeed, and don't have it a really easily creaseable material and fabric, but by the same token, it does need to be breathable.
Week 6, staff particulars.
Yes, we're going to have a bookkeeper on board, an accountant. We need to have a few details ourselves around all of the staff members to be able to kind of input them into your company. And a classic one that the bookkeepers are going to need are tax file number, so they can organise their group certificates and their tax. Personal banking information, so we actually know how to pay them and where to put that money. Provide the staff with all of the privacy policies around superannuation, clearing houses, and all that sort of stuff. And this is where it's fantastic to get an experienced bookkeeper on board, because all you need to say to them is, what do I need to do around super and my staff? And they'll have all the information at their fingertips. Make sure that they do select which superannuation fund they're with, and also get their personal phone, address, and email contact details, so you can always readily email out their contracts or telephone them if you've got any questions. Send out a bunch of flowers as a welcome to their home address if you wanted to go to that extent. So get all their staff particulars at around week 6.
Week 7, establish your preferred provider status with funds and order prescription pads.
Now, preferred provider status, this is one of those classic ones. It does have benefits and drawbacks. I think you and I are both on the same page, Amina, that the drawbacks may actually outweigh the benefits that a preferred provider status would deliver for a new practice?
I sure am. I think there may be a couple of funds that may be okay in terms of they will only lock you into a fee schedule for a certain amount of item numbers, like a few preventive item numbers. But to be controlled with your whole fee list by these funds is really not profitable nor beneficial, and I really, can't quite understand how you can offer really good comprehensive dentistry on a very restricted fee list. So depending on what type of practice you want to operate and what type of dentistry you want to perform, I would do a fair bit of research and make sure you understand what your commitment is to these funds.
That's right, and we can go very deeply into this topic. We certainly will be with the program that we're offering to new practice buyers and owners, that the knock-on effect, the ripple effect of becoming a preferred provider impacts your patient base. That's, as you say, it impacts how much treatment we need to squeeze into every day, how well we can deliver a quality service. And it is, at the start, you can understand why people want to do it, especially if it's a start from scratch practice, because you think that's the source of new patients. If I don't have that, I'm reducing down my chances of being successful from the start. But remember, this is a long game that we are playing. We don't want to just be successful in the first year. We want to make sure we're setting ourselves up for success in the long term. And once you've committed yourself to preferred provider status, then you are really locked in. It's difficult to come out of those sort of arrangements and shift your patients to a higher fee with lower rebates and have that be a smooth process. So it's something to really consider deeply. Yes, there's benefits at the very start, but those benefits do wane and the drawbacks do start becoming the thing that you're having to contend with long term. So think of it carefully. If you do decide to become a preferred provider, do recognise that there are limitations of how many in a particular area, so you may not get it for a start. So call early with the health funds you're interested in and find out what the process is and if you're actually even able to get onto that. But do that at around week 7, because it'll take a few weeks to get all of that up and running.
Prescription pads, very exciting.
That's why I got you to talk about it.
From the following link, as we've mentioned before, this can be a little slow, so make sure you allow yourself plenty of time with this one.
And you never want to run out of a prescription pad either. So I think you've got the option of buying 1, 3 or 6. Just get 6. have them all in storage. It is something that's a good idea to have them in storage under lock and key, just so they're a bit secure. But don't worry about overstocking these ones because they're always come in handy.
Yeah, again, and a lot of people are doing them through their software these days as well. So
Yeah, that's true. Week 8, you want to be actioning your marketing strategy for week 8. And because you think about the local area awareness that you want to start to generate, you don't want to start that when you've already started in the practice. So just say opening day in your practice was, what are we now in March, was the 1st of April, April Fool's Day. You don't want to be a fool and start marketing on April Fool's Day, on the 1st of April. You want to start marketing weeks prior to, open up that software appointment book, start taking calls and booking in people straight away. So when you do come to, especially for your startups, when you do come to the first day of operations, you've got patients there for that week. How wonderful would that be?
absolutely. And I think particularly if you're opening a new practice that's not, you're not buying an existing practice, the minute you can, I would be having a sign on the door that says, dental practice opening soon in big letters so people, passing traffic know what's coming. And the moment you can, have a phone number or an email address so people can start making appointments, that early, or at least leaving their contact details somewhere. So
absolutely, and that could even create some sort of landing page where you've got some helpful document that potential people could potentially download, and they need to leave their email and name in order to download that document. At least you're getting some sort of activity going, so you've got a group of people to contact and say, we've opened our doors, how exciting, come on down. Even if you don't need an appointment time, come on down, we'd love to show you this beautiful new space.
yeah, and I think making relationships with everybody in your community, the local pharmacist, the hairdresser, whoever is around you, go and have a coffee with them or drop them a little sweet and introduce yourself or something like that.
That's a
It's just
fantastic
having those
idea.
relationships.
Fantastic
Yeah,
idea.
the minute, we can meet people via email and letterbox drop and things like that, but we never remember them like we do when we've met them in person, do we?
Oh, there's nothing like speaking in person, that's for sure. And there are so many beautiful ways of just, dropping off a big basket of muffins to your local GP clinic. I mean, that's an aligned kind of business as well. We've opened up down the road. We're going to be holding some information evenings for patients around linking the link between dental and general health. We'd love you to come along. So, develop those sort of relationships. Wonderful, wonderful. We're getting close to open day, Meanie. So what are people going to be doing in week 9? They're going to be contemplating and planning. So this is a bit of thought time. Go for a little drive, go for a little walk, go for a little bike ride, and just start considering over the days in week 9 around what your expectations of staff are going to be. What patient service policies you'd like to have in place. This is how we like to go into treating patients here. The purpose and vision of your practice, and we've taken people through this process, haven't we, Amina? It takes a bit of contemplation and that guidance to be able to get there, but hey, it's powerful. It starts directing all these other things that go on in dental practice on their daily operations. What goals need to be in place to build practice viability? Like, where do you want the practice to be? Where is it going to be at the end of year 1? So therefore, how much production needs to happen? The team culture and the behaviours you want your team members to adopt and you find acceptable as a group. What working environment do you wish to create? I mean, by the time you're buying a practice, you've already worked at other practices, so you know what you like and you know what you don't like. And so really articulate that. Identifying what you want to create will help you provide very clear direction and leadership to your incoming team. And they will need that because they have no idea where to start.
Staff training and establishing expectations, design policies, procedures and processes, and finalise your fee list.
Fantastic. 2 weeks to go, week 10. So the staff training and establishing expectations is a bit of extension from week 9. So you've got all these thoughts set in your brain, you've got an idea of where you want everything to take, but you and I have certainly experienced that when you get your team involved in these kind of discussions and they've got a contribution to make and they're heard, their thoughts been heard and are helping to formulate these policies of the practice, they're far more likely to be enthusiastic and on board with all of these policies.
We always like our own ideas, Julie, don't we?
You and I especially. So gather the team together for a brainstorming session. Don't put a time limit on it. If you can sit around for a couple of hours, that is fantastic. Formulate some agreements as to how patients are to be managed, how the team will communicate and behave with one another. And you can imagine this sort of powwow is going to be even more effective if you do have those more experienced members joining your team, because they're going to have all of these instances and stories from other practices that they've worked at, and that can really help to identify what's helpful moving forward and what's not helpful moving forward. So the purpose of these discussions is to get everyone on the same page, and each feels a sense of responsibility and enthusiasm because they were involved in the development of these agreements.
Establish your systems. With your team's involvement, discuss and develop the systems and processes all staff will follow in the provision of dental services to your patients. So I think the important thing with this is, if the staff have very clear guidelines of your vision and your mission, they will have a much better understanding of how to deliver the service that you want to your patients. And if they've got some clear direction, it'll take away a lot of questions, and you'll be a lot happier with their performance, and they'll feel much more confident to perform.
That's for sure. And when do we stop writing systems, Amina?
Never. And they'll get revisited and revisited and revisited.
That's it. And developing your systems and a practice manual that will house them. There are very effective ways nowadays to do that digitally, and you and I have got some great hints around that a lot of practices have taken on board and benefiting from. So that is something that we can certainly go deeper into. But do start to establish systems. The minute you've got a system in place, everyone knows what's required of them, and you're starting to deliver a consistent service to your patients, which helps them perceive you as professional, and they can trust in the processes. So the systems are great. The fee list. So determine the fees you are going to charge for each item and service. And also we need to make sure we're adding in all of the veteran affairs. If you're seeing child dental benefits schedule scheme people, then make sure that we've got access to all of the current fee levels for that as well. An effective guide that you can use, because who knows what to charge all of these, tens and tens of item numbers, is the Australian Dental Association attendees to this webinar may have noticed do come out, I think it's within their newsletter, once a year. They do a fee list survey, and you can have a look at the averages, and that's a great indicator of one of the pieces of data you can use that can help direct what your fee list is. Of course, other things such as how long you take to get a certain thing done can, a particular service done. An effective step to take within your practice is determine what's your hourly rate. What do you need to make every hour that you're productive in that practice to meet your financial goals in order for you to be viable? And that can also play into your decision around what fee to attach to each item number. And maybe do a bit of a quiet little ring around to the practices in your area, just to make sure that you're within a ballpark. That's sometimes a good idea for common things such as an extraction, a checkup and a clean.
Yeah, and don't be shy about getting feedback from other staff members, such as, other dentists in the practice, and particularly if you've got a hygiene department, having your sort of going through the hygiene protocols and guidelines with your hygienist or therapist, and getting their input is really valuable as well.
Fantastic. Just tap into that brilliance that you're going to hire. We're enticing people to hire experienced people, but we do need to make sure that we've got a trainee or two coming on board over our journey of dental practice ownership to make sure that we're constantly filling the pool of recruits. Week 11, the countdown is coming down to the D's. So we're going to get a list of incidentals that we need to manage up until we open our doors, and also have a think about how we're going to maintain our viability and growth moving forward. And so we've got a whole series of incidentals that you can manage in order to be more smooth running on day one. But have a list. Maybe use a note thing in your phone, a notes app in your phone, or a note-taking applications such as Trello that Amina and I absolutely love using. But just start brain dumping all the things that you think about you might need to do. You'll forget little things if you just try to cast it all to memory. So, for example, some of the ones that we've got mentioned here, and there are a lot, so we'll go through them quick. Veteran Affairs and Child Dental Benefits online claiming process. You might need that from day one. Identifying the specialists you're going to be referring to. Make sure you get their referral pads and business cards to hand over to patients. Local radiology clinic that you're going to get your OPGs taken at. Allocate cash to a till, petty cash. Get a copy of the MIMS pharmaceutical book, whether it's a physical or digital copy. Meanie?
Design your new patient medical history form, and that too could be hard copy or digital, could be iPads involved. Items for the staff kitchen, cutlery, cups, etc. Items for the bathroom, toilet paper holder, soap, and so on. Reception items, pretty obvious, calculator, stapler, pens, folders. Start establishing your practice manual. Digital is better for many reasons, and for those of you that join us on the program, we'll be talking about that further. And getting keys cut for staff, or a lot of them are swipey cards these days.
Oh, really? How modern. Staff lockers, installation of security system, waiting room items for calming environments, such as it could maybe you want oil burning or you want a little water feature trickling. Calming aids for patients in the surgery, so get some squeeze balls, maybe a blanket, neck pillow. Music for the practice, is it going to be piped through the whole practice or just individual ones for reception, waiting room and the surgeries? So there's a whole raft of things that are going to start being added to your list of things. Just imagine yourself operating every day, and what are you picking up, what are you using, what are you doing, and start recognising early on all the things that you need to have up and running from day one, just to make sure that things are as smooth as possible. You won't remember everything, but we're just trying to go for the 80-20 rule. 80% of the day is going to work really well. Until
there's no coffee.
Oh, I didn't put that coffee machine. Got to make sure there's a coffee machine. Okay, so we want to make sure that we are putting some sort of monitoring process in place, so we're not guessing and getting a sense of whether we're going to be viable or not, or we're reaching that viability. We're busy, so there's patients coming through all the time, and so we must be okay. Don't ever do that. Because things get out of hand real quickly. So make sure you do establish a proper system. Track your key performance indicators or KPIs every month. Access financial statements every month as well. Have a look at the profit and loss, etc. Keep a cash flow projection going all the time. That, every now and again you get large chunks of money coming out for superannuation contributions, etc., and BAS payments, and all of a sudden you go, oh my God, there's no money left. And meet with your accountant regularly. Every 6 months is a really good place to start with your accountant, maybe more often with your bookkeeper. But again, as Mina said, if you wanted to go deeper into it with the program with us, we teach you exactly what key performance indicators to track and how to track them, and go through all these monitoring spaces for you. Week 12, our last week of this 12-week journey. And what are we doing?
Goal setting and targets, my favourite.
This is exciting. This is where things do get pretty exciting, isn't it?
So, in business, if you're standing still, you are going backward. Staff needs to evolve. Patient and market expectations evolve. Your desires and vision evolve. Avoid complacency by designing a path of continual improvement. Now, things will always change. When I said before about systems will change, I mean, for example, you may, employ a hygienist or a therapist. So now the whole way that we appoint our exams and our hygiene appointments, that's all going to change, and there's going to be all new systems. This is why I say things will change all the time. There's always something to do in a dental practice, isn't there?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I think time goes so quickly, doesn't it? You know, you'll be crazy busy and thinking about a whole raft of things, and all of a sudden 6 months have gone by and you haven't made sure that you've actually established any goals. So doing it in that last week is a great idea, because it'll be nice and fresh in your brain, and you'll have established a monitoring process for yourself. And the goals are super important. You know, just like with anything, any goal that we make, if we just check in on ourselves, we set the goal in January, we check in on ourselves at the close of the year in December, it's way too late to do anything about it. It's too late in October to do anything about it. However, checking in every month, you can shift and change and maneuver the way you're managing all of the things that you do in the practice to make sure you are constantly moving towards and modifying your path towards your big goal.
Yeah, and you can rejig things. You can make decisions differently. I mean, for example, you know, you may have decided that in April I'm going to take 3 weeks off, and you might have lost a lot of time and money at some other month. You can, you know, change your thoughts around that and go, you know what, I'm only going to take a week off. Things are a little bit tight right now.
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. It's proper planning,
it's really
planning for success. Otherwise, you know, what is it? You fail. If you plan to fail.
Plan to fail.
Say it?
You fail. Yeah.
You fail to plan, you plan to fail. That's it. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So do make sure you do the planning, and there's a whole bunch of information and assistance that can be provided with this particular space as well, to make sure that you not only set realistic goals, they're very good goals, and you create a plan to actually achieve those.
Oh, and how many of us, you know, we set goals for the new year, we get to March and nothing's changed.
Nothing's changed. And nothing,
why not?
Yeah, nothing changes if nothing changes. So we've got to change stuff.
Right.
So that's your 12-week journey. That's your 12 weeks prior to opening day, to make sure that you are doing as much as possible to uncover the things that you need to do to be able to hit the ground running on day one. But you've probably made a whole series of notes around this webinar and thoughts and ideas that have come to you throughout it. But what happens if you'd like a little bit more support with this? What's next?
What's next is very exciting.
Yes.
Julie and I are running the Dental Practice Establishment Program. It's a 12-week program, so you can plan for your success. There'll be weekly live sessions with Julie and myself to coach you through every step. There'll be support, and you'll be able to collaborate with your fellow students, and you will be creating your practice establishment plan. There'll be so much detail, resources, contacts. It will make your life so easy, save you so much time, and we'll be doing stuff as we move through it. They're all things you need to do anyway, but you'll be in a supportive, shared environment to work through all of this.
That's it. And instead of us just saying you need a business plan, we're going to be helping you write that business plan. Instead of us just saying go and recruit staff, we're going to take you every step through that recruitment process, how to attract great people, do the interview process, assess resumes, train them with the initial things they need to do to get on board, all those things. The goals establishment plan, we're going to find out what goals you need to reach viability, business viability, and then growth as well, and help you create a plan for that. So you come out of this 12 weeks with an enormous amount of information that's really going to set yourself up to be wildly successful, which is what we want. That's our whole goal with everything that we do, isn't it, Amina? To help dental practices be wildly successful.
Yeah, it's definitely an opportunity, you know, not to be missed, particularly work with Julie and I.
Oh, that's right. It's totally glorious, that's for sure. So if any of our attendees would like to enrol, find out a little bit more information about the Dental Practice Establishment Program, then simply click on this link, and that will take you through to our homepage, which has a whole bunch more information, costs involved, timings of our live sessions, so you can really see if this is going to be of benefit to you. We do encourage you to share as many questions and thoughts, insights into the chat, and we're going to get back to you ASAP with all of our answers and input from there. So So we'd like to thank you for the time that you've devoted to this webinar. It's been a lot of fun presenting it. We hope you found enormous value from it as well, and we hope to continue providing you with value within the program. So for those of you who are interested, we're looking forward to seeing you on the inside. Thanks everyone. Bye. Thanks, Meanie.
Thank you.